For decades, 911 was built around a simple idea. A telephone number belonged to a place. That place had an address. That address belonged to a jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction answered the call. Simple. And for the time, it worked. But it also created silos, localized systems, localized databases, localized procedures, and local boundaries. Everybody built what they needed to make 911 work in their own backyard. And that got the job done quite well. But now as we move to next generation 911, we're starting to feel the pain of those silos because the emergencies no longer fit neatly inside one phone number, one address, one PSAP, one network, or one vendor platform. A vehicle crash can cross jurisdictions. Callers can be mobile. School incidents can involve alarms, video, maps, panic buttons, and multiple agencies. And when that emergency needs to move, the question becomes very simple. Are we really transferring the whole emergency, or are we just transferring the caller? The answer to that question and more is coming up next on TiPS, Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories in public safety news. Here's your host, Fletch, with today's tips.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I'm a NENA-certified ENP, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I bring you the latest in telecommunications and public safety technology news. Today, I want to talk about one of the most important hidden challenges in NG911, the transfer problem. Because it's not just transferring a voice path, not pushing a caller from one agency to another. I'm talking about transferring the context of the emergency itself, the voice, location, callback, text, crash data, alarm information, maps, notes, and confidence levels. I'm talking about the entire audit trail, the entire public safety event package. Because back in Legacy 911, the transfer question was usually, can I get this caller to the right PSAP? But at NG 911, the question is much bigger. Can I get the entire emergency context to the right agency without forcing everyone to start over from scratch? That's the real test of interoperability. Why we built silos. A lot of people ask this question and they forget that Legacy 911 was born in a very different world. Most telephones were fixed. A home phone stayed in the home. Business phones stayed in the business. And phone numbers rarely, if ever, moved. So the network used that phone number to help determine where the call should go, because it was based on where the call was coming from. And quite frankly, that model made total sense. And when 911 needed to be deployed quickly, everyone built what worked for them. States built systems, counties built systems, local agencies built procedures, the carriers built the routing, and the vendors built the databases behind it. And look, there was nothing wrong with that. It was practical, it worked, and it got 911 deployed relatively quickly, given the state of technology at the time. But it also created a very siloed environment, and over time, those silos became familiar. People learned them, procedures formed around them, and funding models grew around them as well. Local vendors built local products that were built around them. And eventually, this is how we do it turned into, no, this is how it has to be done. But next generation 911 is not just an upgrade to old plumbing. It's different plumbing, a different operating model. The old model no longer fits the new emergency. The old model was built around the fact that the world, the caller, the phone number, and the location were tightly connected. Unfortunately, that world is gone. Today, there's a 95% chance that the caller may be mobile. The emergency may involve a vehicle, a wearable, a cloud phone system, or a panic button or alarm platform, or even a camera system. And on top of it, the most relevant information may not even come from the caller at all. That information may come from data, and that data may need to move. In Legacy 911, transferring the call was often enough. You moved the voice, maybe some location moved with it, and maybe a second call taker had to ask a couple of quick questions over. Was it perfect? Nah, but the information set was a lot smaller. And today in NG911, That's just not good enough anymore, because today's emergencies may include text, video, images, crash telemetry, as well as building data, alarm information, responder notes, and location confidence, as well as decisions that have already been made based on the data. So when that information doesn't move with the emergency, or the next agency starts with partial information only, or worse, nothing at all, that's not Next-Gen 911 interoperability. That's just the old problem wearing a brand new set of clothes. Transferring the emergency. This is the phrase that I want people to start to remember. Transfer the emergency, not just the call. Think about a connected vehicle crash. The first ECC receives the voice connection, location, crash severity, rollover indication, vehicle type, and whether anyone responded from inside the vehicle. Now imagine that crash is near a jurisdictional boundary. The call may need to be transferred. But what moves? Does only the voice move? Does the crash data move? Do the notes move? Does the receiving agency know a fire and EMS were already recommended? Or do they just take the word of it? How about the location confidence? Does that follow? Or trauma notifications? Or do we just throw it all out and start fresh, just to be sure? Now think about a school emergency. Somebody presses a panic button. A message to 911 takes place. Lo and behold, a floor plan's available, and a camera feed may already exist. On-site access control information shows that a door's been forced open. So the incident may involve school security, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and neighboring jurisdictions. But if that event gets transferred or shared, does the whole context travel? Or does each agency only receive a piece of the puzzle? Well, that's the hidden test of NG911. Not whether data can arrive once, that's easy, but whether it can move and move correctly as the emergency evolves. Why progress can look like confusion. So this is where this starts to get a little uncomfortable. It seems like a lot of resistance to NG911 is not just technical. Some of it's actually cultural. We've always done it this way. Why do we have to change? Hey, our system works. Our county has got its process. We already chose this vendor platform. Our data, that lives over here. And from inside the silo, all of that sounds very reasonable and real. But the thing is, the emergency doesn't give two flips about the silo. The caller doesn't care less about the funding boundary, and the crash doesn't even see the county line. And the school incident doesn't care which vendor owns which dashboard. You see, data only becomes useful when it reaches the right people, in the right form, at the right time. Oh yeah, and it needs enough trust to act on. And that's why progress sometimes feel like confusion. More systems, more data, more rules, more training, more things to learn. But the real progress is not more confusion. The real progress is more efficiency, with less repetition, less rekeying, less verbal relay, and less lost context. That means more shared awareness and less starting over. It's about more continuity, more accountability. That's the reason to change. Not because the legacy 911 failed. It probably never did. It's just that the emergency has outgrown it. NG911 interoperability is the real mission. Next generation 911 often gets described in a lot of technical terms. EZNets, NGCS, SIP, GIS, policy routing, additional data, multimedia, and all of that matters. But you have to remember, interoperability isn't just a feature, it's the mission. If every state was going to build an NG911 environment that only works inside its own walls, then we haven't solved the nationwide problem. If every vendor builds a dashboard that can't be shared to the next system, we've not solved the operational problem. If the call moves but all the emergency context stays behind, we haven't built Next-Gen 911. We just built silos that were a hell of a lot faster, and that just can't be the goal. The goal's a coast-to-coast emergency communications ecosystem where all the right information is able to move with the emergency. across agencies, across counties, across states. And that includes vendor platforms, networks, and response disciplines. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about everything going to everyone. That would be total chaos. What I'm talking about is the right information, getting to the right place, under the right rules, and that being the promise of the next generation 911 ecosystem. The reality check. Look, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. There are some real barriers here. You've got legacy contracts, local governance, differences at the state level, funding models all over the place with vendor boundaries, CAD integrations, cybersecurity policies, as well as privacy, training, and general policy. And the simple fact that most agencies are already stretched razor thin. So when somebody asks, hey, why do we have to change? Trust me, I understand the question. Change costs money, change takes time, and change creates uncertainty. But the answer is simple. We're doing it because the public expects that the emergency response system is going to work as one system. They don't know where the county line is. They don't know which EZNet that they're on. They could care less which vendor platform that the agency uses. They could care less why the first PSAP had all the data, but the second one didn't. And look, frankly, they shouldn't have to know. When somebody calls 911, the system shouldn't be losing context because the emergency crossed a boundary. That's the public expectation. And next generation 911 has got to be built to meet it. The bottom line. Listen, the future of NG911 is not going to be measured only by whether we can receive more data. No, it's going to be measured by whether we can move the emergencies correctly and save more lives. Legacy 911 was built in silos because that was the fastest way to get the job done. And it's gotten the job done for half a decade. But now it's those silos that are becoming the problem that we have to solve. The phone number no longer defines the emergency anymore. Callers may be mobile. The data may come from many sources. So the response may involve multiple agencies, and the incident may no longer stay inside of a clean boundary. So the test is no longer just, can we transfer the call? No, the real test is, can we transfer the emergency? Can the voice, location, data, notes, competence, decisions, and the audit trail all move together? Can the receiving agency automatically continue with their response without starting over? That's the promise of next generation 911. Not more dashboards, not more portals, not more silos, but just better graphics. No, the promise is shared context, trusted information, operational continuity, and an emergency response system that finally starts acting like the interconnected system the public already assumes it is. In Legacy 911, we transferred the call. In Next Gen 911, we've got to transfer the emergency. That's it for this episode of TiPS. Today in Public Safety, this is Fletch. I hope I opened your eyes with a new take on a very old problem. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. We'll catch you next time. Take care. Hey, it's Fletch. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you learned something new. Remember to catch all of my previous episodes of TiPS, Today in Public Safety, published every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on most social media platforms and streaming 24/7 at 911tips.com. My blogs are located at fletch.tv and my personal website is at fletch911.com. Remember to like and subscribe. It really helps out the algorithms. And if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Catch past episodes on 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on SiriusXM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.